Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to Health Check. As you know, Health Check is sponsored by Kingdom Health Connections. I'm your host, Dr. Vanessa Bolling. So delighted to be with you here this morning. Remember to like and share with family members as well as friends. How are you doing today? I pray that you are blessed. I pray that I find you prospering and that you are in good health. Even as your soul prospers, I pray that you have begun to even make some changes for your own personal health, your wellness, as well as your healing, so you can live out and walk out this abundant life. You know, we can pray, we can intercede concerning making sure that the spirit of infirmity does not come nigh our dwelling, doesn't come nigh our temple, doesn't touch our family members as friends. But there are physical applications that we need to also make so we don't allow the spirit of infirmity to reside in our lives, right? We have the power. We have the power to choose life. We have the power to choose death. You know, sometimes we are creatures of habit. We love routine. Culturally, we're connected to our foods. Culturally, we're connected to certain lifestyle patterns. But when the light turns on and we become aware, even through things like this broadcast, we become aware of what might not be right for us, what might not be good for us. We begin to make those changes. Our awareness awakens. But as you've heard in broadcasts before, we want to move from awareness to actions to work this thing out so that way our bodies can be in good health. We know genetics are a factor. We know the environmental factors are a factor, but a huge measure is what we do about it. So I want to encourage you today, Dr. Vanessa, on how we can move forward in that lifestyle of health, wellness, and healing. As you see today, the topic is about insulin resistance and what it means. This month in October, not only is it Breast Cancer Awareness Month, but it's also Diabetes Awareness Month. So I want to factor into this before things actually turn into type 2 diabetes, to be specific, to be specific, to be specific. There is a factor that's in place before type 2 diabetes or even pre-diabetes shows up, and that's insulin resistance. What is insulin resistance? Well, before I get into what that is, let's talk about the normal pathway that happens when we eat food. So we eat food, we get glucose from our food, we get sugar from our food. Then our pancreas releases insulin so that way the insulin drives the sugar that's floating in our bloodstream now into our cells so we can use that sugar for energy for our cells to function and to be able to function the way they were designed to function. So our cells use it for energy. Insulin also helps the sugar to also be stored in our liver. So when we do things like fast, when we don't eat, sometimes we say, you ever fasted for about 8, 12 hours, maybe 16 hours, and you realize that your blood sugar isn't crashing? That's because our liver has kicked in and it's secreting the glucose that it's stored. So the insulin helps to put the sugar into our cells as well as into our liver. So that way, when we don't eat and we do things like fast and we're just drinking water, our liver is actually secreting glucose so that our sugars don't bottom out or don't tank out. But when we eat foods or we drink beverages that are really rich in carbohydrates, so they're really rich in a lot of sugar, um, what happens is the body does what it's normally functioning to do. Our pancreas rather, is working overtime to produce more and more insulin, to really drive that sugar into the cells. But because whatever we're eating or whatever we're drinking is so rich in glucose, that pancreas is constantly trying to catch up. And the pancreas can burn out over time from doing this over and over and over. Not only can the pancreas burn out from secreting so much insulin over and over, but our cells are no longer as responsive to the insulin that it's secreting out. So herein lies the term insulin resistance. There's a resistance to insulin because it's been hyperactively stimulated by insulin over and over again. It no longer responds to it. So insulin resistance happens in the cells of our muscles and our fat, as well as in our liver. And then if there's insulin resistance, what happens? There's more glucose that's circulating in our bloodstream. And we know the damage this can cause. Not only can it lead to prediabetes, but it can lead to type 2 diabetes. And there's so many complications that happens after that. So there's more blood sugar that's circulating. So things that we can find out with insulin resistance is our blood sugar tends to be high. We might not even see, like, for example, the blood test, the A1C, we might not see that change for a little bit when insulin resistance is present, but we may see high cholesterol levels, so high triglyceride levels, high LDL levels, low HDL levels. You may, as if you're close to your doctor and you've reviewed some of your results, you may see those numbers. So those terms may be very familiar to you. But before high blood sugar even shows up, it may start to show up in your cholesterol level, that there may be insulin resistance that's going on. So insulin resistance that is not reversed, or it is a metabolic condition in terms of we're not metabolizing things the way that we should. And if it's not turned around through our behavioral patterns, if it's not adjusted, then it can lead to prediabetes. And we can be in insulin resistance for 5 to 10 years. We can be in that phase for several years before prediabetes even shows up. And a lot of statistics has shown that prediabetes can progress to type 2 diabetes within 5 years if there's no change. So when we're in that insulin resistant phase, that prediabetes phase, that's a huge indication. All right, let's make some adjustments. Let's do some things to change things around so that way we can metabolize things better. We don't want to be in the zone of too far. We don't want to be too far in the zone of no return. So there are things that we can do, even if there's a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes. Your numbers can be better controlled with some of these things that I'm going to mention that we can do. We can do things like exercise. I know it sounds repetitive with most chronic conditions. The foundation of what we can do is pretty much the same. There's things that are specific to your clinical profile, someone else's clinical profile, but the foundation, the pillars of health remain the same. There are things that we can do. We don't have to deal with the complications of things over and over, right? There are things that you can do. Oftentimes, when a chronic diagnosis comes, we become powerless, we become hopeless, we feel like there's nothing that we can do to be better. There are things that can be done. Definitely having a well-balanced, healthy diet, an anti-inflammatory diet, a diet that's rich in fruits as well as vegetables, a diet that's rich in water, a diet that's rich in less processed foods. So whole foods, things that we actually cook. The processing, what we want to do is in the kitchen. The processing that we want to do with the food that we eat is what we're processing and what we're putting together. So that way we know what's in the food that we're eating. We want to do the processing ourselves rather than to eat things that have been manufactured and processed for us, especially when we start to see these things happen. With insulin resistance, there could be weight gain as well. I think I'm jumping around a little bit, but there's there's darkened discoloration around the neck. So acanthosis nigrans is the medical name for it. But there's a velvety, darkened discoloration around the neck. It's not a pigmentation or a skin color pigmentation thing that you were born with. It's more so something that develops over time. Those are signs of insulin resistance. Another sign of insulin resistance is belly fat. Belly fat. Believe it or not, belly fat is highly inflammatory, and it's an indication that insulin resistance is there. So how many of us want to start working on that, burning some fat, because that is a sign of insulin resistance. So we can exercise, reducing our weight by what we're eating. We want to also get enough sleep. There's a lot of studies that are out there that talk about the correlation between a lack of sleep. Sleep apnea can also trigger this by causing a lack of sleep, but lack of sleep can cause insulin resistance. Again, it's all about metabolism, how our bodies are metabolizing things. So reducing processed or simple carbohydrates. So we're not talking about fruits. We're not talking about that. We're talking about things that are processed. So candies, things that we can buy for 25 cents, maybe 50 cents. Nowadays, actually probably $1.50. But those things can really cause our sugars to spike. You'll hear the term glycemic index foods, high glycemic index foods. So what are those foods? That's white bread. That's white processed manufactured foods. There's certain things anything, breads, rice, pastas. Those are high glycemic index foods. So those foods spike the sugar. That's what high glycemic index food in a nutshell means. It spikes the sugar. We know continual constant spiking of blood sugar not only spikes the blood sugar, but the pancreas is going to respond by spiking the release of insulin. And doing that over and over and over and over again will lead to this called insulin resistance. Again, we can stay in insulin resistance for a very long time. Sometimes 50s, 60s, diabetes, pre-diabetes starts to show up, but we've been in that zone for quite some time. So there are things that we want to keep in mind. Things that take longer to process will spike our sugar. So certain meats will do that as well. So there are certain things. Sometimes if you're working with your provider, there may be a discussion about starting a medication. One that's commonly used is metformin that helps to reduce insulin resistance, helps our body metabolize the sugars that we're eating through our food. So sometimes it gets to that point where we need to do something. If you remember a broadcast that I mentioned before, let's not just say no, 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 no. I think it was on a Real Talk Tuesday. Let's not say no to medications and then, do nothing about the insulin resistance. It's there. It's showing up on the blood work. It's showing up in our numbers. And if we don't do anything about it with no substitution, it's going to progress. It's going to progress. So let's be wise about what we can do. I know it's hard to change habits, but let's start small and let's start now, little by little by little. Let's do this because it's good for our overall health, wellness, and healing. And we want to train and put our children in a place where they can be in good health as well. So they can live a healthy lifestyle and do the same for their children and children's children. So go ahead and put hashtag I choose life. We know we have the choice today between blessings and curses. Blessings and curses. I know that now I'm twisting up with my words here this morning, but that is okay. Today we have given the choice today between life and death, blessings and curses. I call on all of heaven to witness the decision that you and I make today. Oh, that we would choose life so that not only we would live, but our descendants would live as well. Let's choose life by reversing this insulin resistance. Let's choose life by making our next decision one that we know is healthy and good for us. Let's choose life today. Also, keep in mind that with insulin resistance, there may or may not be symptoms. So, there may or may not be symptoms. So, let's keep this in mind that we can go completely asymptomatic. So, choosing life is very important. Choosing life is very important. I'm sorry, there's something that's completely covering my screen here. All right, choosing life is important so that not only we can live, but our descendants can live as well. Everyone be blessed. I'll see you here again next week, Tuesday, 9 a.m. with your host, Dr. Vanessa Bolling. Be blessed, everyone. Choose life. Let's do this. Let's do this so that not only we feel well in our body, but our body is doing well for us as well, so we can fulfill purpose and fulfill the call that God has for us. Be blessed, everyone. Bye-bye.